In April 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice finalized a new regulation under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act that establishes technical standards for web and mobile accessibility for state and local government entities, including public universities. For the University of Michigan, scheduled compliance is April 24th, 2026. This shifts digital accessibility practices in teaching from a reactive to a proactive approach. Everyone at the university plays a role in remediating and creating accessible digital content and eliminating burden on people with disabilities. Serena Irani serves as a digital accessibility specialist intermediate for the Disability Equity Office within the Equity, Civil Rights, and Title IX office at the University of Michigan, and she joins me now. Hi, so we've heard a lot about the scheduled April 24th, 2026 deadline. Can you tell us more about the new ADA Title II requirements and what the University of Michigan is doing to meet them?
Yeah, so ADA itself has been around since the 90s, so this is not a new requirement or responsibility, but there wasn't a ton of clarity for a really long time around what that meant for digital content, really. So the goal with Title II and this update is to make sure that digital information and content can be accessed, participated in, made use of, and experienced by everyone, including people with disabilities. Part of what the University of Michigan is doing in response to this update has already been in place. We've had an SPG or a standard practice guide on electronic and information technology accessibility since June 2022, so well before this update came about in 2024. We've also put together the Digital Accessibility Strategic Initiative, also known as DASI. This is a collaborative effort between the Disability Equity Office, Information Technology Services, and many other units and partners across campus that are working to help advance digital accessibility goals and meet these compliance requirements in time. A big part of this initiative has been about spreading awareness, making sure people understand what accessibility is and what's expected of them, but also creating resources, providing enterprise licensed digital accessibility tools, so ones that everyone has access to, regardless of what unit or department you're in, to help with this work. And also just making sure that communications are going out about digital accessibility so that everyone can stay informed on all of our up-to-date guidance and information.
I know it's hard to predict, but what do you think could happen after April 24th?
Really, we are expecting that this is an ongoing effort. So, this is not something that you need to complete before the deadline and then never do again. It's more so the start of this work. So, we really want people to be approaching this from that mindset of how can I integrate accessibility into my workflows and processes so that I can continually create accessible content, not just worry about a specific deadline for when this is going into effect.
This has been a really large collective undertaking by your team at the Disability Equity Office, ITS, and like you said, many other U of M colleagues and units. Can you share some of your accomplishments thus far? So, for example, how many faculty and staff have gone through trainings or what resources have been created to support this effort?
Yeah, so one of the accomplishments that I'm particularly proud of is the 10-week accessibility challenge. This is a training and workshop program that started in the College of Engineering, went in collaboration with the College of LSNA, and is now hosted by the Disability Equity Office. It's an initiative that helps faculty, staff, and students learn more about the basics of accessibility. So, where can they get started? What are the best practices and concepts to be aware of? And really breaks this down into piece by piece, weekly newsletters and live sessions that you can join to learn more about accessibility. And this has been a really big success for our office. We've had in fall 2025 and winter 2026 over 1,000 participants in the program. We also offered a course accessibility challenge, which is a 3-week condensed version of that program that's specifically tailored to faculty and instructional staff. So you're only getting the resources and guidance that are relevant to the work that you do. Our office in general has had 143 trainings and workshops in 2025 that reached over 8,000 attendees overall. And we've only had more workshops since in 2026. I think some other successes we've had with the ITS digital accessibility team is providing some of those enterprise level tools, things like Panorama for Canvas, Grackle for Google Docs, slides, and sheets, Site Improve for websites that have really made this work a lot more approachable for faculty and staff across the board. One of the other resources I'd want to highlight is the Digital Accessibility Compliance Roadmap, which we put together to help guide people through this work, as well as the Digital Accessibility Liaison Network, which involves so many great partners from across campus. We're at 100 liaisons now from over 45 different units and departments, which I think is just amazing.
So, we've talked about what this is and who it involves. Let's talk more about the why. Why is digital accessibility so important?
So there's a few different reasons. One I'll start with is that it's the right thing to do. I'd say that accessibility aligns with our mission as a university to challenge the present and enrich the future. Accessibility asks us to think about the way we design and deliver our services and programs and think about whether we're truly meeting people's needs. Is everyone able to fully access and engage with all of the great stuff that you're putting out there to make sure we're meeting the community where they're at? Another piece of this, I would say, is that we want to maximize the impact of our services and programs and our potential audience. Disability is a part of the human experience. More than 1 in 4 adults in the US have a disability. That's just the known number. The actual is likely much higher. So it's a huge potential audience that you're missing out on if you're not making sure that your content is accessible. We want to recruit talented students and employees at this university to do great work. And we want to make sure that people with disabilities are included in that population as well. The third reason is the one we've touched on a little bit already, and it's the fact that it's the law. We have a legal obligation to do this work. It's also part of our university policy and expectations to provide accessible content. But it's something that I would say the whole world is pretty much moving to at this point in regards to these laws and regulations. And it's something that U of M needs to evolve right alongside with it if we want to keep up.
One question I've heard from faculty is why can't this just be handled on a student by student basis? Can you explain why a comprehensive, proactive approach is necessary?
So there's a few different reasons why we're taking a more proactive approach now. First is that accessibility and accessible design makes your digital content more usable for everyone, regardless of whether they have a disability or not. So providing accessible course content improves the experience of the course for all of your learners. And the other part of this that I would say is that good accessible design practices improve that formatting and structure of your content. They provide multiple access points for people, and they also ensure that students with disabilities don't have to disclose if they have a disability just to get baseline access to their course content. They don't have to advocate for themselves every single time they need it. So, creating accessible content from the start and providing that to your students saves you a lot of time and a scramble, midway through the semester to provide access for a specific student or for a specific piece of material. I'll also mention that accommodations are not going away. Those are still going to be provided for students through the services for students with disabilities. But this proactive approach that the Title II update is asking us to do is really lessening the need for specific case by case accommodations and just promoting a more accessible and inclusive space across our campus. I think a lot about for courses specifically that faculty that are creating accessible environments for those entry level courses are really opening the doors for students to a new pathway or a new field of study that they might not otherwise engage in if the course isn't accessible or if they think that that pathway might not be for them. So it's really about creating that inclusive environment that's welcoming everyone in.
Why is this also important for our research community at University of Michigan?
Yeah, so I know the focus is usually on the course content and the requirements there, but for researchers, which is huge part of what's done at U of M, there's two aspects to this. One is that um, all of the research studies that are done on campus, we want to make sure that we have a representative population and that people with disabilities aren't inadvertently closed or shut out by our studies. If they don't have access to the registration or even just the information about the research study itself, they won't find out. The other part of this is that once you've conducted your research and you want to share your findings with the world, you want as many people as possible to be able to learn and benefit from your study and what you were able to achieve. And so, having accessible presentation content and formats for the way you are including your research study is really important because that's a huge part of your potential audience there too that might miss out.
Can you talk more about the proactive approach to accessible course design? What are some of the best practices that faculty and course designers can incorporate to make sure their courses are accessible to everyone?
So, my advice would be to start with an accessible template that could be for your syllabus or your slide deck templates for your lectures every week. That's a great place to make sure you're thinking about accessibility from the design process from the start. And then in terms of best practices, you want to make sure you're thinking about formatting and structure. So things like headings in your documents or lists or tables. The design aspects that we think about are usually color contrast or spacing and layout design. And then there's also accessibility metadata. So things like alt text for your images, captions in your video content, things like that. And I think this is a case where, for course content, having captions in your video and a transcript and actively describing your visuals as you present that is great for students with disabilities. It's also just great for any students that just want a different way to process the content. They want to read through the transcript instead of watching the full video or listen to the lecture as they're on their morning commute. So it's really just about being flexible and adaptable with different access points and different ways to engage with your course content. I know it's a big concern sometimes where people feel like in order to make something accessible, they have to take away the original option or the original design they had of the course material. But I would say accessibility is about adding on new features, additional ways for people to engage with your content that really can just open the doors. It's about adding things, not removing them from your learners.
That's really great advice. And another thing I've heard from faculty is that this is going to add a lot of work to their day to day workload, and they're not sure how to do it all. Any advice about that?
My recommendation would be that you can definitely prioritize your course content. We're not expecting anyone to be an expert in this work overnight or to complete all of their course content remediation very quickly. We know this is an ongoing process and that the tools and resources we're providing are evolving as well. And so this is not something that needs to be done rapid fire. You can think about which pieces of your course content are high priority. So, what's either going out to a lot of students in a very large entry level course, or what is most critical for them to be able to engage with the learning experience and course content itself. Whereas more supplemental or optional materials can be lower on your priority list to address as you go. So, there's a lot of different strategies and ways to approach this work. It does not have to be done full scale, 0 to 100. Yeah, you definitely have time as well, I'll also mention I know it's been a big concern with the April 24th schedule deadline, and I want to clarify that course content needs to be accessible when it's delivered or distributed to students, not on April 24th. So if you are teaching a course in fall, you have until that point that it's actually distributed to students to make it accessible.
Great clarification.
Yeah.
I know here at the Center for Academic Innovation, we've also looked at this as a welcome change because of how many lives are going to be positively
Yes.
changed from this once we kind of get those processes in place and continue to work on remediating content.
Yeah, exactly. We want it to feel like the new norm or the new just habit or practice for people, not an additional change. So, yeah.
So, all of this, what's next for your team?
So, for our team at the Disability Equity Office, we are really thinking about how we can best provide support across campus. And we know that a big part of that is providing more support and guidance for instructors specifically. So, we are currently bringing on some new roles that are dedicated specifically to course accessibility. They'll be handling consultations with instructors, so helping them plan and figure out how do I handle accessibility in my course. We'll also be having them do more training and workshops that are tailored to instructors and course content. A new one that we're launching, we're calling like course clinics, which is pretty much where we come to a department and offer like a hands on informal workshop where we can kind of demo things, just answer any questions that instructors have while we're there in your space and kind of walk you through it. And the third piece that we're looking at with these new roles is more research and resource development, especially in those complex course areas, things like math, STEM content in general, music, arts. There's not a lot of guidance currently on how to handle or approach that with an accessible mindset. So we're really trying to put our efforts there and develop new resources that are tailored to what faculty are looking for and where they need that support.
What advice would you give to faculty or staff who are feeling frustrated or challenged right now?
I would say that we definitely recognize that a lot of faculty are feeling really concerned or anxious about these upcoming changes and what they need to do in time. We are here to offer support and help however that we can. All of the resources and programs that we've been putting together are directly in response to the things that people are asking of us. So if you need help with a certain course area, or you aren't sure where to start, please come and let us know and ask for that help because we will do our absolute best to tailor our trainings and our guidance to those needs as well. I'd also say that this is not something that needs to be achieved overnight. You don't have to do all of your course in one go. It's an ongoing process that we're all learning and growing with, and that you can definitely prioritize your materials. And you can really think about the ways in which you're offering your course content with that end goal of making it as accessible as possible to all of your students. So I know it can feel like a new change, and that's scary, but it's also something that's advancing a goal of making our content more usable for everyone. That includes people with disabilities, but also just all of your students can really benefit from this shift. It's something that will make your research materials as well as your course content um, for the better. So I really think thinking about that end goal in mind of why we're doing this work and who it's serving and making our campus a more inclusive and welcoming space is really important to think about, even as you're getting lost in the nitty gritty of the details and the work itself. Yeah, just that we are here to help and support however we can.
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming in today. It's been wonderful to talk about this really important work with you.
thank you so much for having me.